Good morning, everyone. My name is Ida, and today I want to talk a little bit about what the word crossover means to me, both in terms of crossing different fields, but also in crossing some boundaries. And I will illustrate this through the work I've done over the last 2 years, where quite a lot of things have changed for me, because I dared to cross over. So I assume we've all been there in the morning, standing in the kitchen, wondering, what am I going to have for breakfast today? Well, for me, finding new imaginative answers to that question has actually led to a whole new career. By looking at a piece of toast as a mere canvas, there's no telling what might come next. The main crossover I want to talk about today is the one that happens when food meets art, becoming food art, as the official term is. It's simply taking everyday ingredients and putting them together in a new way. Say you have your piece of toast, some cream cheese, some sugar peas, and radishes. You can choose to put them together in any way you like. You're actually free if you think about it. So you can have a tulip toast, if you like, and it doesn't have to take that much longer to make, and it's much more fun in my view. It's all about looking at your food in a new way and trying to reimagine your meal. And that's what I've been doing as well. So for me personally, crossing over from a meat eater to a vegetarian in 2011 meant that I had to reevaluate how I cooked and how I looked at food. It meant introducing more fruits and vegetables and more colors. I think for me it meant that I connected with my food in a new way, and it made me more open to being creative and ultimately to be able to play with my food. Both of these are vegetarian, by the way. Beware the watermelon bacon, a new addition. So one morning I decided I would make my breakfast a little bit different. I had seen some food art online, and it inspired me to try it out for my own. I'm not the only one doing this, but I thought it was a cute idea, and I decided to share it on my then newly started Instagram account. And I got some nice feedback on my bear and fox toast, believe it or not. And that inspired me to continuing to discover some other food art. And through that, I found my hidden talent, which happens to be playing with food. I cannot draw, I cannot paint or sculpt or any of the other types of arts. I can just make food art. I had found the creative medium that suited me, and it happened to be food. So that was quite a revelation, and it sort of kept me going as well. So in the beginning, I started to do quite simple ideas. I crossed in levels on complexity over time. I crossed from doing things with just a few ingredients, putting them together in a rather simple way, to more complex ideas. Imagery from fairy tales, monuments, or book covers. And ultimately, it also meant a crossover to the most literal food art in my Art Toast project, where I recreate famous artworks on a piece of toast canvas. Here you can see a side-by-side comparison of the famous Grant Wood painting American Gothic. My version is here. If you were wondering. I would say they are interpretations, they're not copies. They are meant to capture a bit of the essence of the main painting, but not be exactly like it. So this is something I started doing also to show what is really possible to do with food. What are the outer limits for using ingredients creatively in a creative manner, and also the outer limits of patience, perhaps. The easier ideas, the more simple things, I still do them, and they are meant more as everyday inspiration for people to change how they deal with food and perhaps be a bit more creative in doing them. So I was doing all of this all alone in my little kitchen, peaceful, quiet, but all of a sudden it wasn't that quiet anymore. People started to talk about what I was doing. They started to leave a lot of comments, and bloggers picked up on the story, and then some bigger sites also. And in January 2013, I got recommended by Instagram itself, and that led to a lot of attention and also other media following on. So this is just a tiny fraction of the articles that have been written about my work following that. I've been covered everywhere from Norway to South Africa to Korea to the US. Name a country and I'm sure there's something written about it. Also, a lot of journalists suddenly wanted to come for breakfast. Well, I couldn't say no, obviously, so I've had a lot of them coming over, which is nice. Even though they don't tend to eat the food, I have to eat it myself. So all of this was a little bit overwhelming, I must say. Crossing from complete anonymity to a sort of internet stardom almost overnight. It was not something I expected, and it was also not my intention, since I had started this just from my love of food, basically. It was not the strategy that was behind it. It just happened. But of course, things like this happen, and I'm very happy about it. And it also meant that I was able to do the most scariest crossover I'm going to talk about today, which was the one going from Ida Skivenes, working in a safe job at Statistics Norway, dealing with foreign trade data, to Ida Frosk, a full-time food artist, playing with food for a living. And this happened in a relatively short time as well. I started to get quite a lot of opportunities to take on projects, and people were actually willing to pay me to play with my food all of a sudden. Wow. So I think in the course of about a half year since my big attention happened, I took a year's leave from my work in Norway, and I leapt into the full-time food artist career. And that year has now passed, and I have officially quit my job. So now there's no going back to the old statistics office in Norway. But that's okay, that's okay. But it's just, it was a little bit of a leap to cross over from the safety of that to the rather insecure working conditions of a food artist. Of course, suddenly becoming a freelancer has its other advantages. It also meant that I had the freedom to decide where I wanted to live in the world. And through that, I decided together with my boyfriend to cross from Oslo to Berlin. Because when you work online, I do most of my work electronically, it doesn't really matter where you are. So you can choose the city you like. And we liked Berlin. It's a creative place, and we wanted some new inspiration. So we went from that to that last year. It also meant leaving the grey office building. This is a little bit back in the days. The cars in Norway are not that old-fashioned. But anyways, so into my kitchen as a working place, which has its advantages and disadvantages, of course. I do most of my work using only a mobile phone. But for some of the larger projects I've done, there's a higher quality needed. So then I also use a little bit of a DSLR setup in this very professional looking studio of mine. So I do everything in daylight, which also has its downsides, but it makes the photos look quite natural, so I like the effect. So I've also been able to cross from just being purely digital into the analog world through the ability to make a book. This book is just mobile phone photos, the size of the book was actually determined by how big you can print these iPhone photos in a reasonable book quality. And it's actually quite impressive. It looks very good, I must say. They've also been printed bigger for exhibitions, so there's no limitations now. You have a lot of quality just in your back pocket in your phone. Making it into a book also meant that I was able to write a bit more and to put a bit more of background information in. So there's some basic recipes and some helpful tips and tricks for food artists in here. In addition to also then some instructions on how to make food art. So it's sort of a cross between an art book and a cookbook. You can use it just for entertainment, to look at the photos, but you can also use it to make food art. So it's also a cross, and it makes it very difficult to put it in the right aisle in the bookshop, of course. It was published in Norwegian and English last year and has very recently come in the German edition, which I'm very, very happy about. And I actually like it better than the Norwegian one. It's better quality printing. And by the end of this year or early next year, it will exist in 7 languages. So it has actually had quite a life outside of the digital as well, which is impressive, I think. Being a food artist also meant that I got a little bit of different assignments and some challenges, and I just want to highlight 2 of them here. This was a request I got from Vogue. They were wondering if I could make a toast inspired by fashion. And I'm not really following the fashion shows, so I had to do a little bit of a research, but I was really struck by how the models, the Prada models, skirt really reminded me of a bell pepper in terms of both color and texture. So I used that as a starting point to make this little creation, and I was quite happy with the result. Of course, making food art with blue ingredients is very hard, so I had to drop the coat. But otherwise, I think it turned out nicely. So that was fashion, crosses with food. Now it's travel crossing with food. This is part of a campaign that I did for Lufthansa, where I recreated famous travel locations on a plate. This is Rio de Janeiro, and I did this when there was a World Cup. It's made out of Brazilian ingredients, such as tropical fruits, dulce de leche, brigadeiros, and all the fixins. So that was also a fun way of finding inspiration in things outside of food and sort of trying to merge them together. So of course the tastiest crossover is when the food art becomes a meal. Because I make food art that's supposed to be eaten. I'm not doing this as just an art project. And that probably makes me a little bit different from a lot of traditional food photographers and artists. I don't want to encourage food waste, so I try to eat everything I make. That also means, of course, that I cannot fake it. I have to use all natural ingredients, and I have to make sure that they go together taste-wise. Otherwise, it would be not very pleasant to eat. This was, by the way, a very delicious Monet art toast. It's pistachio butter with apple and kiwi. I can only recommend it. It's not very hard to make either, so maybe. Maybe for you later for lunch. So just to round it off a bit, you might be wondering why I think my stuff works. Why did it become so popular? Of course, I cannot give you the ultimate answer to this, but I think outside of the factors, of course, timing and also good luck, I think it works because what I do is highly specialized. It's very visual and it's quite easy to understand, I think. That means that it communicates quite easily across all sort of boundaries of geography and age and whatever background you have, you can usually understand it quite easily. I've also focused on providing high quality imagery and being consistent over time. Also being quite active on the social platforms and interacting with the people there, commenting and taking in their feedback has been important over time. And if you do that, and if you have a product that people like, then people will also recommend you. So that has happened with me because I've been able to give my audience what they like over time. It's also become popular because of that. So I hope you enjoyed my little adventure in all of the crossovers I've done in the last year or so. It's been quite a ride, and you don't have to do all of these. I've tried them out for you somehow. But perhaps it's time for you to cross your food with art a little bit, to just open yourself up to a new creative experience and relate to the food on your plate in a new way. I know you're told you're not supposed to play with your food, but I say to hell with it. It's a boundary worth crossing. It's just a nice creative exercise, and it doesn't mean more mess. It doesn't mean you're just playing instead of eating. I think if you're really getting interested in your food, you will also get interested in tasting it and trying new ingredients. So it's just a way to open up your mind a little bit, and you don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it in the morning even. I know that can be quite hard for a lot of people, and I don't do it in the mornings that much anymore either. And of course, if you're hungry for more, my book is the perfect starting point to help you get started with the food art. It's available in all bookstores, and you can always check out my Instagram account, Ida Frosk, and my quite not so frequently updated blog if you like. So bon appetit, thank you.